Wherever you are on your road to retirement, we're here to help you stay on course. Welcome to Mason Street Retirement Insights, the show dedicated to helping you plan your financial future.
What is your biggest concern? People are very focused on the amount of money that they have saved, but it's really about the income that we generate. Income is what's going to drive lifestyle. And so the income strategies that we utilize are what's key.
And now, here's your host, Sean Mason.
Welcome into Mason Street Retirement Insights. My name's Casey. I am here every single week with Sean, asking for his ideas on what you can be working on as you get closer to that retirement goal line. Sean, great to see you, my friend. How are we doing this weekend?
Hey, Casey, I'm doing really good. Having some fun. Last weekend, we took the grandkids to the zoo. I say this because I like to remind everybody the greatness that we have where we live. But
That's right.
I took them to the zoo. Yeah. And it was so great. Lots of fun. Saw the animal, the giraffes, the elephants, everything you'd think of. But they have this cool exhibit right now going on called Jurassic Park. It's where they got the dinosaurs there. So that was really fun. Kids dug it.
Yeah. What was their favorite animal?
I don't know how to say it, but I'm looking at this dinosaur and it freaked them out at first and they kept wanting to go back. So
Tyrannosaurus Rex? Velociraptor?
Yeah, let's say, how do you even know? Let's say one of those.
Those are the classics. All right, well, I'm glad you guys had a good time, but I'm glad you're here with me today to do the show. I'm always excited when I get to pick your brain, Sean, because as we know, there's a lot more noise out there than there used to be, but that's what this show is all about, cutting through that noise and helping people make smarter, more confident decisions when it comes to their money. So before we dive in today, Sean and I just want to make sure that you know exactly how to take that next step if you've been thinking about your own financial plan. 559-847-0039 is our phone number. Write that down. Save it in your phone. If you've had those moments lately where you're thinking to yourself, you know, am I actually set up for this? Or do I really know how all these retirement pieces are going to fit together? Sean's got a great opportunity for you to get some clarity on that. He's set aside some time on the calendar exclusively for our radio listeners who have $500,000 or more saved for retirement for your very own complimentary retirement planning assessment. And Sean, I want you to talk to us a little bit about your assessment process. What does that mean exactly? What can people expect there? And why is this assessment such a valuable step for somebody to take when it comes to planning their financial future?
Yeah, it's really a good experience when people come in. I think, what happens is it just gives people an opportunity to walk through their situation and actually talk it out. We may have some recommendations, might find an opportunity to, work together on some level, but really walking through the different areas that people have questions on. People get their questions answered. They also kind of getting enlightened a little bit in some areas that maybe they hadn't thought of. When we talk about retirement, we got to get it right. And a lot of people come in and they say, I don't know what I don't know. Mm-hmm. And absolutely, that's something we can't be having in retirement. And so it's just a really good experience to get some insight.
That number to do it again, it's 559-847-0039. And it's like Sean was saying, this first meeting is really just a low pressure discovery conversation. It's a chance for you guys to get to know each other and for Sean to get a better understanding of what your specific situation is. And then for you to understand what your options may be and how Sean could help you reach your retirement goals. Our spots are limited, though, so that's why we want you to go ahead, take advantage. Lines are open right now. Our Mason Street teammates are standing by, ready to take your call. So 559-847-0039 is what you need to dial, or you can also find us online. We are at MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. You can head over there, share your info, make sure you say you heard us on the radio, and then one of our teammates will reach out directly to you. All right, Sean, shall we do it? Shall we get into some retirement talk?
Yeah, we've got some really good stuff to talk about. I'm excited this week.
I am too, and I want to start today with one of those rule book situations that trips people up because on the surface, sounds like it should be simple. When you leave a job, most people hear, just roll the 401k into an IRA, easy peasy. But here's the curveball. When it comes to Roth money, the rules are not as flexible as people assume because what you can't do right now is move personal Roth IRA money back into a workplace plan. But Congress is considering a change that would allow Roth IRAs to roll into workplace Roth plans. So a little complicated, Sean, but I'm curious, why would anybody want to do this? And what are the pros and cons of a move like this? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, I've always come from the position that an IRA usually is most beneficial. I love this regulation that's being suggested, though, because I just like the freedom. I think it's really important that we get to do as we feel that we should, and no regulation should limit us on moving forward. I don't know. I guess maybe there's some benefit to it. Unless an employer plan has some unique features, you're really always going to be better off, or usually better off, in an IRA. But some benefits might be in the employer plan. The fact that you can take a loan from the employer plan, which you cannot do from an IRA. It's certainly not fees or not the benefit, because having an IRA at a custodian, you're going to have very low fees anyway if we're not talking about management. One of the things, though, you got to make sure that you understand is you can, at age 55, if you retire and truly retire from your job or career, unlike the rest of us that have to wait till 59 and a half, or I should say, unlike if you're in an IRA where you have to wait till age 59 and a half to take withdrawals penalty free. You can actually start taking withdrawals from an employer plan at age 55. And so that's really important to know in planning.
Okay.
But the two major benefits of the employer plan, the 401k, the 403b, is going to be the increased contributions. An IRA, you can contribute $8,500. A 401k, you can contribute $32,000. So quite a difference there. And then also the match. We've always got to catch the match. No matter what. Those are the benefits of the employer plan, but I'll tell you, the balance is not what gives you those benefits. Moving the balance of a Roth IRA back into the 401k, I just don't see a lot of benefit to it. The negatives of the employer plan are a lack of investment and management options, right? Because in the employer plan, you get whatever they allow you to do. With an IRA, you've got the whole world of investment and management plans, management options available to you. So when you separate from the job, or in most plans, you turn 59 and a half, you're able to move those dollars out of the employer plan into an IRA. If they pass this law, maybe you'll be able to move the Roth money back into the plan. I was talking with John and Bonnie, I don't know, a couple months ago, and this came up. John is 55 years old, Bonnie's 60 years old, and they want to retire in 2 years. Actually, Bonnie's retired. John wants to retire in 2 years.
Okay.
But Bonnie is going to be 57 years old when John retires, and they're going to need distributions from Bonnie's 401k. Mm-hmm. And so in planning, we left enough money in that 401k so that they could access those dollars until Bonnie makes it to age 59 and a half, which is when they will change over to taking distributions from the IRA. What's really important for people is that every situation is just so different, and there's never a one-size-fits-all plan. So, if you're having trouble putting all this together, or you want to make sure you're thinking about it correctly, or maybe you have some questions, I want to invite you to come into the office. We can take some time to talk through your situation, help you get some insight into how and what you're doing now is affecting you now and then into the future. And we may have some recommendations that you can use to put yourself in a better position. And if you're one of our first 5 callers, we're going to provide you with your very own individual retirement planning assessment. We're going to take a deep dive into all those elements that you have to be considering in retirement. So give us a call at 559-847-0039. Our team is standing by right now.
Okay, so Sean, who's the person that you picture benefiting the most from this? Are we talking about somebody who's early career, somebody who's maybe mid-career, or somebody who is nearing retirement and maybe trying to simplify, kind of like John and Bonnie, who you were just talking about? Or maybe could everybody benefit from this in some sort of way?
I'll say again, unless you are really thinking that you're going to need to take loans from that employer plan, 401k, or if you feel like you're going to be retiring earlier than 59 and a half, are going to need access, those are really how you want to start thinking about leaving balances in those employer plans. There's just not a whole lot of benefit to it.
All right. Well, that number again, it's 559-847-0039. If you're thinking, I'm not sure if I'm making the right moves with my accounts right now, this is a great time to take a step back, get a second set of eyes on that plan. Sean is offering you his complimentary introductory retirement planning assessment today. If you've got $500,000 or more saved for retirement, all you got to do is pick up the phone, give us a call, claim your spot. 559-847-0039. And our teammates are standing by, happy to get you scheduled. Or you can always head to the website. We are at MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. Okay, so we talked about where money can move. Now let's talk about what can quietly move out of your account every single month without you even noticing. And I'm talking about fees, Sean. So I want to challenge you to take a look at your next retirement account statement. See if you can tell what you're paying in fees, because they can show up in different places. They can show up as advisor fees, fund expenses, commissions, and a lot of that just quietly comes out of your account month after month. So this has me wondering, is there a simpler way to kind of help get a handle on it? And I've got Jason Kephart with Morningstar talking about this. Let's take a listen.
You really want to keep in some rules of thumb, like your all-in costs. Like if you have $100,000, what did you actually pay in fees that year? Whether it's commission, fee-based, or fee only. And what is your total cost? We think the average in the industry is probably around 1%. That's what gets bandied around a lot. So if your fees are significantly north of that, I would maybe ask some more questions. And if they're significantly under that, maybe you're getting a good deal, or maybe there are some services you're not being offered that, others might be.
So I'm wondering what you think of his suggestion, Sean. How should somebody evaluate whether the fees they're paying are actually worth it for their situation?
Yeah, Jason makes some good points. It's the all-in cost and by the way, this is so important because it affects the rate of return. And over time, that can make a huge difference. And most people don't know what their fees are. Jason made a good point as to what you really want to be looking at is your all-in cost. I asked somebody, in fact, Eric, he was in last week, and I said, Eric, what are you paying in costs in your IRA right now? And he told me 1%. And I had a feeling that the advisor had told him that management fees were 1%. Well, we get his statement and we do a deep dive into those expenses, and we found that the fees actually are 2.1%, and he had no idea.
Double what he thought.
Over double what he thought. And I'll tell you, Casey, that's not unusual. That happens all the time, and it's because when you ask what your fees are, there's all different types of fees. There's loads. A load is when there's a cost for you to go into a fund, and then the advisor is making a commission on that cost. They might charge you for transactions. So sell Microsoft and buy Coca-Cola. They might charge you for that. Some firms charge for time in addition to their fees. And as you all know, management costs, and typically that's what the advisor is going to tell you. If they tell you it's a 1% management or investment management cost, that's typically only one of those categories. You also have to be careful of internal fund fees. Those are fees that don't even show up on the statement. Those are fees that when you're in a fund, the actual cost of being in the fund is internal. And so those aren't going to show up on your statement. You can find those in the prospectus, but the reality is most people don't really read the prospectus.
Yeah.
But yeah, Casey, to your question, how do you know if it's worth it? I like to try and urge people to think about the net. It's not that fees are bad. It's all about the value that we're going to get from paying the fees. Look, I don't mind paying top price to have my kitchen remodeled, right? But the job that they do better be greater, at least relatively, than the lowest price. Mm-hmm. So think about the net. If somebody's going to charge you 1%, they better be able to do better than you by 1%. And if they do, it might be a good deal because it's all about the amount of money that goes into your pocket or into your account. That's what you got to be looking for. And then you also got to be recognizing that there's value. Some advisors, some advisory firms provide more service than just that investment management. That investment management is easy to see. Fees versus rate of return, that's simple. But if they're providing other or additional services, you got to take that in consideration as well.
Well, that's kind of my next question, Sean. What should you be getting in terms of planning, in terms of advice, in terms of services for these fees that you're paying? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question because, and I won't suggest that what you should be getting, because what you should be getting is what you're told that you're going to get, right? And so if an advisor tells you that all they're doing is managing your money, then that's okay. If you sign up for that, what's wrong with that? But if they're suggesting that there's other things that are going on that they're doing, you want to be cognizant of that. Income planning. That's huge, right? And often advisors are doing income planning and they're just relying on the investment fee to compensate themselves for that. But they're taking care of income guarantees. They're putting together Social Security and pensions and annuities. They're figuring out time horizons in the different buckets in your investment accounts. Think about tax mitigation. If as a firm we can save a family $300,000 over their lifetime in tax liability, how do you put a rate of return to that? And we might do that using Roth conversions, tax loss harvesting, using RMD strategies. Any advisor that is, working with you from a tax perspective, and if you have a CPA, you want to make sure that that advisor is on the same page with your CPA. They should definitely be communicating together. But, estate plans, stress testing. Look, stress testing your retirement for pitfalls, for hurdles, for challenges, that can keep you out of deep water in the future. There is truly a value to that, but how do you actually put a number to that?
So let's say somebody takes our challenge. They do a deep dive on their next account statement, Sean. They discover they're paying more than they originally thought. What are their options? Do they then adjust investments? Do they adjust the relationship they have with their advisor? Do they perhaps work on both? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the discussion with the advisor is really important. You've got to know what your all-in costs are. You have to know that. We're going to make sure, and we're going to look at every account that comes in our office. We're going to look at those statements, and we're going to make sure that we have clarity on exactly what those costs are. And if you find that those costs are too high, you've got to be having a discussion with that advisor. It might be a good idea to go out and talk with some other advisors to find out how much they're charging and what kind of services they're providing for those charges.
559-847-0039. If you're sitting here thinking, I honestly do not know what I'm paying or what I'm even getting for the fees that I'm paying, this is exactly why Sean is offering his complimentary introductory retirement planning assessment for our radio listeners with $500,000 or more in investable assets. 559-847-0039. That's the number to do it. And this is a chance for you to take a step back, look under the hood, make sure your retirement game plan is not quietly leaking money through these hidden fees that we're talking about or hidden expenses, or maybe a strategy that just doesn't match your goals anymore. So 559-847-0039 is what you need to dial. And I want to emphasize again, too, there's no pressure here. There's no obligation. This is a discovery conversation where you can ask Sean your questions, you can get clarity, and you can let him see where you stand and what adjustments might make sense for you. So one more time, 559-847-0039. We've got teammates standing by right now. They're ready to help you find that next convenient time on the calendar, 559-847-0039. Or if online's an easier route for you, just head to masonstreetretirementinsights.com. Click contact, fill out your info, and then we'll reach out directly to you. Now, Sean, of course, fees are one of those things that can quietly chip away at a retirement plan. But there's another force that does the same thing in real life every single year to retirees. And I'm talking about inflation now. Inflation's still running above the Fed's target of 2%. The latest read was 3.8%. But the market may have already priced that in. We've got investment officer Sebastian Page here on CNBC. Let's take a listen.
March, at the end of March, we thought the year-over-year earnings growth for the S&P 500 was going to be 13%. We're running at 27%. So here's what we're doing. We're taking some profits on the broadening trade, but importantly, we're hedging inflation risk. You know, my dentist always asks me for investment advice. I don't know why, but I always keep it short. I always say, stay invested, stay diversified. It's trite, right? But what I'm telling my dentist now is stay invested, stay diversified, hedge inflation risk.
So, Sean, when you hear the words hedge inflation, what does that actually look like inside a retirement plan? I want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize enough, Casey, how important this is, especially in retirement and planning. Inflation is probably the biggest mistake that I see people making, and it can crush a retirement planning because it's all about projecting expenses into the future, and especially look, when you've given up the paycheck, you've got to get that right. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the positive perspective on this is that inflation is predictable. Believe it or not, it's one of those areas that is predictable because it's a symptom of the economy. It's all about supply and demand. If you look at 22, which is our most recent high inflationary time frame, we knew that inflation was coming. You had COVID supply chain issues. It was difficult for people to get products. The supply chains were really stressed. And then you take, at the same time, because of COVID, the government was injecting trillions of dollars into the system. Look, supply, it was hard to get products, and a lot of people had more money than they've ever had because of all the different programs that were being initiated. That creates an opportunity for demand to really skyrocket. And then Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, you all remember where that administration injected another $5 trillion into the economy. That's what broke the camel's back. We all knew inflation was coming, but it's manageable. All right, so what are we worried about today? It's oil prices. The higher that oil prices get, the more probability there is for inflation to start rising, and how long the oil prices stay up, that's going to be considerable. So he makes a good point in starting to hedge, utilizing hedge strategies to hedge against inflation. Part of inflation is being concerned about interest rate hikes. So to your question, Casey, how do you hedge, or what does inflation hedging even mean? Mm-hmm. It means outpacing inflation. It means growing your money at a faster rate than what inflation is. Stocks and bonds. Look, in 2022, we remember stocks and bonds, they plummeted. Both of them together while inflation was going through the roof. But typically in history, stocks and bonds do outperform, I should say at least stocks outperform inflation. Mm-hmm. You definitely want to pay attention to interest rates. You know, back in 2022, interest rates were hiked, 7 or 8 times. They made it actually up to 8%. That gives you some opportunities to hedge against inflation. Look at inflation-linked options. You know, there's what's called TIPS. They're Treasury inflation-protected securities. The value, that's actually a Treasury bond. The value of that bond will go up with inflation, and the interest that it pays will go up with inflation. Also, I-bonds. Consider I-bonds. There's some strategies that you can utilize throughout the whole family. Use all members of the family to engage in I-bonds. And in 2022, we were using I-bonds, and if you can believe it, we were getting guaranteed 9% rate of return on those government guaranteed Treasury bonds.
So when we're talking about this phrase, Sean, hedge inflation, I think it can sound intimidating. You know, you're saying people are like, what exactly does that mean? So what do you want people to understand first about this phrase, hedge inflation? Are we talking about protecting buying power? Are we talking about protecting our income? Maybe a little bit of both. What do you want people to understand first?
Yeah, I think that especially when projecting expenses. So in projecting expenses, we know that things are going to cost more in the future. And how do we hedge against increases in expenses? We hedge against that by increasing the value of our resources. Social Security comes with a cost of living adjustment. Most pensions come with a cost of living adjustment. your resources that you've saved up over time, your 401ks, your IRAs, your Roths, your savings, the dollars that you've put away so that you can use them to supplement those income sources, those have to be increasing in value at least to the level that expenses are increasing in value. So using hedging strategies means to ensure that the value of your accounts are increasing at least to the rate that inflation is increasing.
So when somebody sits down with you, Sean, for this retirement planning assessment that you're offering today, how do you test whether their plan can handle inflation over a long retirement without them having to become a market expert all on their own?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's one of the concerns that people have when they come into the office, if they've been thinking about it, is how do they plan for inflation within a comprehensive financial plan? We are going to stress test the plan for inflation. The CPI, Consumer Price Index, that's where at least the feds get the inflation rate. That's what they say the inflation is each year, is dependent on what that Consumer Price Index shows. And that Consumer Price Index has averaged over the last 50 years 2.8%. Our economy, our inflation actually got down to that 2.8% in January and February of this year. Of course, the oil prices have boosted that up a little bit. But we're going to actually default to using a 4% inflation rate moving forward. Yeah, it's high. A lot of people know that that's high, but we're very conservative in those projections that they use. So we want to overestimate inflation. We are going to run some scenarios where there'll be periodic situations where there's higher inflation. Usually that's short term. We saw that in 2022. We'll see that now. Inflation is ticking up right now, but we know that as soon as oil prices come down, because the economy was solid back in January and February, we all believe, analysts believe, that inflation will start coming back down again once oil prices come down. And this is why I encourage people to come in and talk with us. If these things are on your mind, get a little bit more clarity so that you can get more certainty in what the future has to offer, then you should come in and we should have a discussion about it. It's going to help you walk through those different concerns that you have. So give us a call. Our team is standing by.
559-847-0039. That's the number to do it. If you were thinking, I don't know if my plan can keep up with inflation over time, that's exactly why Sean is offering you this complimentary retirement planning assessment. One simple conversation can help you see if your strategy is built to grow and to protect and to keep up with the real cost of living. So 559-847-0039 is what you need to dial. That will connect you with one of our Mason Street teammates who are standing by, ready to take your call and help you find that next convenient time on the calendar to meet directly with Sean. And this can be on the phone to start you out, or you can come right on into the office. You can meet on Zoom. Sean's local. He's right here in Fresno. It's truly whatever way you are comfortable with, but it's the perfect opportunity for you to get that clarity that Sean's talking about. Our space is limited, though, so the time to call, it's right now, 559-847-0039, or head online to masonstreetretirementinsights.com. We'll give you a few minutes now to make that call while we take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. Lots more is still ahead here on Mason Street Retirement Insights. We'll be right back.
There are many lessons we learn as we're growing up. One was, don't touch the hot stove. Ow. Today, Uncle Sam is trying to keep that lesson alive with your 401k. Think about it. Don't touch your 401k before 59 and a half. You'll pay a penalty. Hot stove. Oof. Or don't touch your 401k. You'll have to pay taxes. You'll get burned. Ouch. You've been saving in this account your whole life. Why shouldn't you use it for retirement? So the financial industry can keep charging you fees, or the government can roll up your tax bill? Come on. Sean Mason at Mason Street Wealth Management believes in letting you enjoy your money. You worked for it, you saved it. Let's give you the confidence and permission to spend it. And there are plenty of options for you to explore. Go to masonstreetwealthmanagement.com to find out more. It's a no-obligation meeting to talk about planning and enjoying your retirement. Or call 559-847-0039. That's 559-847-0039. And let's give you some financial oven mitts for your 401k.
Hi, what'll it be?
I'll have a cone.
One vanilla cone coming right up.
Do you have any other flavors?
Not unless you want vanilla.
When choosing an advisor to build your retirement plan, you want more than just one option.
That's all you have? Vanilla?
Unfortunately, that's how most 401ks are designed. Limited options. The vanilla ice cream of the financial world. Sean Mason of Mason Street Wealth Management can take that financial vanilla cone and turn it into your retirement banana split. Call 559-847-0039. That's 559-847-0039 or online at masonstreetwealthmanagement.com. The choice is yours. A world of options and retirement flavors, or...
Fine, you want something different?
Yes.
Okay, 2 scoops of vanilla.
You have found Mason Street Retirement Insights. My name is Casey, and I am here with my buddy Sean Mason, president of Mason Street Wealth Management right here in Fresno, asking for his ideas on things that you can be working on as you get closer to your retirement. As you are listening today and you've got questions, want to remind you of our phone number. That's 559-847-0039. You can schedule some time to sit down with Sean for that introductory retirement planning assessment. 559-847-0039. Or we are also online. That website's masonstreetretirementinsights.com. Sean, you got to have a very, very cool experience recently that I've been dying to hear about. You and your wife got to take a little trip to Palm Beach to visit Mar-a-Lago, and you actually got to meet Donald Trump Jr. So I want to start today by you just telling us about this experience. What was that like? Tell me all the details.
Yeah, we were invited, really feel very fortunate for it, but we were invited to participate in a group interview with Don Trump Jr. at Mar-a-Lago. And, wow, Mar-a-Lago alone, what an extraordinary property. Expansive, rolling lawns. It's right on the ocean. Of course, they have golf course, tennis course, all the amenities you could imagine.
Yeah.
But you first drive in there, we entered in on a bus with a group of advisors that were going to be involved in this group interview. And rolling in on the bus, and it's just what you'd expect, armed guards. They're walking the dogs around the bus. They're utilizing the mirrors to look under the bus.
Just a little bit of security, just a little bit.
Just a little bit of security. They actually had done a background check on us previously, obviously. Yeah, but then they
can't
came
believe
on.
they still let you in after that, Sean.
I don't know who would let me in. I don't know. They must have missed some things. But, the guards, they came on the bus and, took our IDs and just made sure that everybody was who they were supposed to be. And so went in, and I'll tell you this, it's amazing. Cottages, restaurants, staff. It's one of the most staffed, resorts, what you might call it, that I've ever been to. They were all so nice. You could imagine all the gold. Everything is lined in gold. Nowadays, it's turned into actually being a membership resort. And so, it's for those people that can afford $1 million up front and maybe $20,000 a year in dues. But, the interview with Don, I'm collaborating with analysts and economists all over the country all the time. But, like you said, Casey, it's really good to hear the perspective of insiders as well. And, one of the things that I really appreciated is that the discussion stayed really focused on, the current economic environment and mainly the future direction of policy. And it didn't drift too far into politics. So I really appreciated that. He did spend a little time talking about how, they were frustrated, how, they had been treated, and everything that had happened to the family. So he did touch on that, and probably deservingly so. And then he did spend a little time on, what it was like to grow up as a Trump kid, in a billionaire family.
What do you say about that? I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really neat being in Mar-a-Lago, where he and his brother and sister had grown up. He was talking about how, they didn't really realize that they were rich until maybe 8 or 10 years old. And they did have what you would expect in luxuries of a wealthy family. But then at the same time, they were held to very high standards. He talked about a story that I really got a lot of joy from, but he had come back to the house, the family house, on a college break. And he talked about how he had been out with some friends on a Friday night and got home kind of late, and maybe 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning. And then about 5 in the morning, he gets a call from his dad saying, "Don, why aren't you at the office yet?" And this is at 5 o'clock in the morning. And Don Jr. says, "I don't know, Dad. It's 5 o'clock on Saturday morning. Why are you at the office?" And Dad says, "Because the world doesn't stop at Saturday at 5 o'clock in the morning, Don." And so that kind of helped us, with setting the tone of how that really was to be a child in a Trump family. He talked about going to construction sites with the father and, being put to work. He said that, he and his brother and sister, they for sure have cleaned their share of bathrooms through the years.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think he's telling the truth on that one?
You know what? I felt like he was being real. I felt like he was telling it like it is. I have a feeling that there's a lot more of those stories. He said that the childhood was very focused on education. And one thing he said that I was really taken back by, and I really appreciated, is that he emphasized that from his father's perspective, it wasn't the university in the educational process that was the biggest priority. It was experience that should always be the focus. And so I really took that to heart. I really enjoyed that. And it came off very real. He seemed very sincere. He seemed very humble. He was different than what you've seen him on television giving speeches. And so really felt like we were just in this small group just shooting it back and forth. But the majority of the interview was directed towards, the economy and philosophy in moving forward, the administration's philosophy in moving forward. A lot of the issues that were talked about are issues that we hear about, through the news, but it was really good to get some insider perspective on that. The administration really prioritized when they first went in reducing regulation and, making trade deals. That was one of the biggest focuses, and it's kind of come through. I mean, we've watched it happen. Energy production, IPO registrations this year through the roof, all kinds of housing projects and manufacturing projects coming through. So that was a lot of fun to hear about their initial intentions on the trade deals. A lot of people were very concerned about tariffs, and we figured out over time and experience, and hindsight makes it real easy, but tariffs did not have the effect that a lot of us thought they would have. Sounds like the administration already knew that, but it brought in a ton of investments from foreign investors. So a lot of what they had prioritized moving in has really come to fruition, and they're just really focused now on continuing to lead. Leading in AI, there's a lot of issues that are up for grabs right now that they feel that are critical that we win the race. AI being a very big one. Digital currency is one that they are hyper-focused on. Space dominance, they believe that whoever controls the space is probably going to be the superpower moving forward. Mm-hmm. And, a big message from Don Jr. was that, a lot of these things that the administration has put into place and is focused on, they're going to take time to materialize in the economy. And so that was a big piece of it. We want to make sure that we are maybe bringing some common sense to all these things and giving a little time.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a very fascinating conversation, Sean. Sounds like an incredible experience overall. And I think it's always interesting when we get the chance to talk with people who have spent their lives around business and wealth and big decisions like you were just talking about. So when you were with Donald Trump Jr. at Mar-a-Lago, he was asked about something that impacts just about everybody at some point, and that's retirement, which is what our show is all about. So I want us to take a listen to this clip.
Start planning for it. Again, there's so many unknowns that happen in life that you can't plan for. You may want to work forever and you may think you're going to be able to, and then, something happens, an accident, a health problem, whatever it may be. So you got to plan for that. There's so much you can do with proper planning to avoid taxes and whatever it may be, to be able to make sure that, the things that you created oftentimes as a family actually ends up in the hands of that family and not the government. You definitely have to plan for that and stay ahead.
So I'm curious about your thoughts on his thoughts, Sean. What does it really take to build a retirement plan that is going to hold up even when life doesn't always go according to our plan?
Yeah, it's such a important and I really appreciated him coming from that perspective. I wasn't sure. Look, you grew up with $1 billion. What is there to plan for?
Right.
But he did get it. He did understand. It seems like he, a lot of it coming from his dad, they're in tune with what's going on out there. And so I really appreciated that perspective, and that concept. It's one that's so important and one that can have a significant impact on a family's, quality of life in retirement and into future generations. I think that, to your question, Casey, it really all starts with really coming to terms with who you are, what's important to you, what you want to accomplish, the relationships you want to enhance, the causes you want to support, what's on your bucket list, what do you want to look back and have achieved, and then, of course, really dialing in what those concerns are. Recognizing that income is what will drive lifestyle, and it is what's going to provide what's important to you. And there's a lot of strategy to income. So planning that out is important. There's a lot of risk to income. Some people, need more guarantees. Others feel better about working on probabilities that the markets will provide more than some of those guarantees might. So getting that strategy is really important. Identifying the elements that are going to affect that income is paramount. When you look at taxes are everywhere. Taxes are all up into everything. But taxes are the biggest erosion factor of the goal, which is spendable income. And so we've got to be hyper-focused on that. Investments have to be allocated based on income. We can never set ourselves up to have to take money out of an account that's gone down. Think of that as paying a penalty. Inflation, cost of living adjustments, they all have to be considered. And then a big piece of, what you said, Casey, in trying to build a plan and create an environment that holds up through all different circumstances is really accounting for those obstacles and hurdles, those challenges that could derail your plan. A spouse passing early, when we're married, usually most of us are going to have a minimum of 2 incomes. And if one of us pass early, we're going to lose one of those. And we've got to know how the other one fares in that kind of a situation. Making sure that we're accounting for medical and long-term care expenses in the future. Longevity is one of the areas that people are concerned about, outliving their money. So that's all got to be planned for. If you take this position or this perspective of being intentional, understanding these different challenges, obstacles, hurdles that could come your way, and recognize what the consequence of those happening are. How are you going to feel it? Look, there's a lot of them that will be okay. We're okay with handling them if they come. And we'll just shoulder that risk. But, there's some of them that we just can't be having those consequences, and we might want to be intentional about implementing some type of a strategy that'll help us mitigate those consequences. Really come from the position of being proactive versus reactive. It's really, really important, and it's what's going to get us through those difficult times. Making sure that our voice is heard. If we become incapacitated, we got to make sure that the way we want it to be is the way it's going to be. When we pass away, we've got to know that everybody knows what we want to happen with our stuff. And so those estate documents are such an essential part of that plan. Of course, always consider your risk tolerance, in all of these areas. plan design should really allow for a confident and stress-free retirement. All of these elements have to be working together in harmony. You know, this thing's just one big puzzle, and sometimes what makes it complicated is that one piece of the puzzle is affecting another piece of the puzzle, and how we understand and see that could make all the difference. And look, this can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know, if you're having trouble putting all of this together, or maybe you have some questions, I want to invite you to come into the office. We can take some time to talk through your situation, help you get some insight into how what you're doing now is affecting you now and into the future. And we may have some recommendations that you can use to put yourself in a better position. And if you're one of our first 5 callers, we're going to provide you with your own individual retirement planning assessment. We're going to take a deep dive into all those elements you have to be considering in retirement. So give us a call, 559-847-0039. Give us a call right now. Our team is standing by right now.
Sean, with all those factors that you just went through and talked through with us, there are so many moving parts, so many moving pieces to this retirement puzzle. Do you find that people tend to overestimate how prepared they are for retirement or underestimate it? I'm curious.
Wow, that's such a great question, because that happens on both sides. And we see it all the time. And both of those can be just as detrimental. Mm-hmm. The more concerned that they are, sometimes that creates procrastination, and they just don't want to deal with it. And I find that if they just come in and have a discussion, they're going to find that maybe they weren't as underserved as they thought they were. Maybe they're in a little bit better position, and maybe they just need to add a few things to their plan. But then on the other hand, if they feel overconfident, they're not working these things out, they're not looking at the big picture, maybe they're not looking into the future well enough, that could create some problems as well.
Mm-hmm. I want to remind you of our phone number, 559-847-0039. If our conversation today has you thinking about your own path, whether you're headed in the right direction or maybe you just want a second set of eyes, this is a great time to sit down with Sean, have that conversation about where you are and where you want to go. 559-847-0039. Or you can find us online at masonstreetretirementinsights.com. Sean, I know another thing that Don Trump Jr. touched on while you were there was the current market and what it means for people who are getting closer and closer to retirement. So I want us to take a listen to another clip from Don Jr.
Well, listen, I mean, I think if you're looking at, the S&P and you're looking at some of the indices, you have incredible performance. I think, from a longer term perspective, so many of the things that this administration and my father are trying to do are really long-term plays, right? You hear about the chaos on a day-to-day basis, and, that's sort of life. But, the reality, when you look at the, even the inward investment that's coming into America, getting other countries to build here, the production, the manufacturing, it's like, well, all those things happen. Oh, I haven't felt it in my wallet yet. Yeah, because they got to build a factory to start the manufacturing. Right. To do, these are things that, candidly, the person who's probably going to get the credit for it in the end, at least at the time, is going to be the president in 28 or the president in 32. When these things get there and they really turn on the economic engine of the United States. So I think you got to look at all of the things that are happening and realize, well, just because you have the press release doesn't mean you're going to feel, we sort of live in an instant gratification society.
That's right.
People, they want it now, and that's not how it works in the real world. And so I think my father's one of the few people in politics who is really playing a long game. Not making a bad decision, at the expense of our children's future to get, to win an election in 2 weeks, but to do what's actually going to be right for 10, 20, 50 years. He's playing that long game, and I think that long game is going to be really important for America.
So, Sean, what I'm hearing is patience and long-term thinking, but that's hard for people who are 60 to 65 and feel like time matters now more than ever for them. So how should they be processing what's happening right now without the panic?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And, Don made some really good points and, pointing out that, we are in that instant gratification type culture. And, maybe just stepping back for a second and really looking at things in the big picture and try and get a bigger picture view will help. Applying some common sense is a good thing. And, sometimes what makes it difficult in my job, in my position, and people that are in similar positions is a lot of people will look at the market in that same way, and they'll worry about a few weeks. I love how Don, talked about the fact that, a lot of these policies, a lot of these things are being implemented. Look, this can give us an opportunity to have optimism. It can make us feel like things might be moving in the right direction. I do get, though, so much of this is based on that media-driven political landscape. Last year in April, we had what was called Liberation Day. And, I experienced it for myself that, people got really concerned about a drop in the market because tariffs were being implemented. And there was a significant drop, but it recovered in 6 or 8 weeks. And then the year ended with a 17% positive return. This year, it's the Iran conflict that people are up in arms about. And if you look at it, the market is up. There's so much to be optimistic about. I think that we just got to take a step back and apply maybe some common sense. But, Casey, to your question, those who are retiring soon, it's understandable that they'd be concerned. But, the question is why? When people have concerns, I really like to dial in and make sure that they're recognizing why they're concerned about it. Obviously, when we're getting ready to retire soon, that means for most of us that we're probably going to start using our resources. If we're 40 years old, we don't have to worry so much about what's happening in the market. We know we have plenty of time, and we believe that market corrections are going to recover. And that period of time is called time horizon, and we're close to retirement. Those time horizons start to shorten, and we do recognize that corrections that come now, maybe we don't have as much time to recover. This reminds me of Brad and Jennifer. We started working with them, 5 or 6 weeks ago. They wanted to retire in 1 year. That's their goal. They had a lot going on. There was tax strategies that we need to implement. They had some properties that they were going to sell. But those weren't the main concerns because they knew that mathematically we could plan for those and implement strategy after some discussion that we went through. What Jennifer was really most concerned about was running out of money. She had experienced and watched her parents go through that, and they actually had to help the parents. And she did not want to put that burden on her kids. And, Brad was really most concerned about what's going on currently. What's going on with the markets. He remembers 2008, and he puts himself in that situation that where if 2008 happened right now, how would they fare? How would life be? And so as part of their comprehensive retirement plan, we included a designed income strategy. We attached to it a reasonable rate of return that fit their risk tolerance. But in doing that, Jennifer was really able to see how that income or those resources were going to last. They weren't going to run out. Those resources were going to last them well past age 100. And then for Brad, we explained how we positioned their risk. And I think this is really important when you start thinking about people that are concerned about retiring and what's going on in the current environment. When we look at time horizons, most of us put time horizon as a result of ourselves, meaning we're getting ready to retire and we're getting ready to spend the money. So now we don't have the time that it takes for market corrections to recover. But maybe if you change that thought process a little bit, if you start thinking about time horizons in the way that each dollar has its own time horizon, things will change. Your thought process will change all that, and it'll be less concerning. We explained to Brad how we put into position for them a guaranteed income strategy that was going to pay most of their necessities, those staple type expenses. But then for the rest of their spending and their quality of life and their advanced lifestyle, we allocated the rest of those dollars in investments utilizing a bucketing strategy. We used the bucketing strategy to earmark dollars to be spent at different periods of time. And what that allowed us to do is push the risk into the future, meaning the dollars that they were going to spend in the first couple years had very little risk. There was very little chance of any fluctuation. So they had nothing to worry about for those current dollars in the next couple years of spending. And then dollars that they were going to spend in 7-10 years, we were really able to go more aggressive with those dollars because, as we talked about before, they had more time to go through that roller coaster and recover in the case of any market corrections. So, Jennifer and Brad, they really got to see a view of what that cash flow looked like. And I believe that, their confidence is where it needs to be at this point.
If people have similar concerns, if they're seeing some of themselves in Brad and Jennifer and their situation, is this something you can dive into in that introductory retirement planning assessment?
Yeah, we really want to. And, everybody's so different. Nobody's going to be the same. Of course, we all have a very similar goal that we all are looking to generate as many spendable dollars from our resources as possible throughout our lifetime. But the way that we do that is going to be different from one another. We all have different risk tolerances. We're all going to use the money for different things. So to come in and have that discussion and just kind of talk out what your situation is, I think that you'll get a lot of insight into what the possibilities are.
We just want to remind you that you do not have to figure this out alone. Sean is here to help, and it all starts with a conversation. So we want to remind you of our phone number, 559-847-0039. If you have $500,000 or more saved for retirement, and this conversation has you questioning how prepared you really are, or whether your plan is built to withstand whatever may come next, or if it sparked anything else that you'd like to talk with Sean about today, we encourage you to reach out, claim one of these spots that Sean has on his calendar to have a conversation with him all about you, all about your specific situation. 559-847-0039, or get connected with us online as well. We are at MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. That is going to do it for us this week here on the show, but Sean and I will be back next week, same time, same place, with more retirement insight for Fresno. But until then, Sean, going to hand it back over to you for the final word today. Take us out, my friend.
It's been good hanging out with you, Casey. I love getting with the community. And I just really want you all to know that success is what we care about. Your success is so important to us. We are going to keep bringing you the information that's going to help you put yourself in a better position. So keep tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Mason Street Wealth Management, MSWM, is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by MSWM on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Motivate Investments. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. Investment advisory services are offered through Motivate Investments, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities, offered through Sean A. Mason, California, insurance license number 0B54860. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Motivate Investments. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. MSWM is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if MSWM is licensed in your state, please call 559-892-0002.
There was a time when the answer was
$1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million.
the question, how much is a lot of money? Think about this. During the 80s, there were about 500,000 millionaires in the U.S. Today, there are over 18.6 million. There are millions of millionaires. The point is this. If you've saved $1 million for retirement, congratulations. But even if you haven't, that's your fortune. Whether you carry that label of middle-class millionaire or not, Sean Mason at Mason Street Wealth Management can show you how to take those hard-earned dollars and create years of retirement happiness. When you do the math on your retirement, it's more about the number you get per month than the amount you've saved. Call Sean Mason at Mason Street Wealth Management for your complimentary retirement review. 559-847-0039. That's 559-847-0039 or online at masonstreetwealthmanagement.com. Want to retire like a millionaire? Call Mason Street Wealth Management today.
Retirement planning doesn't have to be overwhelming. Sean Mason offers expert insights to help you make confident decisions for your financial future. Subscribe now on Apple, Spotify, or visit masonstreetwealthmanagement.com. Mason Street Wealth Management, setting the foundation for your financial home.